Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Way of Mastery. Today, we are going to be covering Lesson 19, Surrender the Dream of the Dreamer. And so right away, we start off in paragraph 2, where it talks about this idea of, it says that we call forth from the Christ mind to every aspect of the sonship in such a way that the mind is stirred to seek ways to heal its illusion and therefore return home to the recognition of what has never changed. And the reason I think that that's so spot on is my own experience with this material is what happens is as you're doing this work, things start to show up, and that's not a mistake. So in other words, you're not being punished. There's nothing that's showing up for you that isn't for your own highest good, your own growth, and your own expansion. And just to realize that these things are showing up, or they're showing up to be healed, to be transformed. And so just an awareness like, oh, I'm doing this work, things are starting to show up. And the exact things that are showing up are the exact things that you're looking to heal. Later on, the paragraph that starts, therefore, the extension of the good, the holy, and the beautiful needs to become your sole purpose. I love that, right? You're just shining love, shining love, shining love in everything that you do. I love the next paragraph. It says, you sought us out because you desire the kingdom as the weight of your illusions has become too painful. I love that. Further on down in that section, it starts to really get into this idea of the physical body. And instead of saying it's my body, it's my body, it's my body, the idea is just to start saying it's the body. So it's a tool. So the body is just something that houses you, but it's not your body. I think that's kind of interesting. Yeah, in the one paragraph that starts off, the body itself no longer becomes the barrier. And then it says the body becomes one thing, a temporary opportunity to extend the good, the holy, and the beautiful. So, just the idea of considering the body to be a tool again, not something that is necessarily something that we keep in so many words, right? And so in the next section, I love it. It talks about the source of all illusion. And it goes on to say illusion can take many forms, yet they all have one source, a decision to perceive oneself as separate from God. So that is the source of all illusion, the belief that we're somehow separate from God, which is absolutely impossible, by the way. But yet we have convinced ourselves that we are. Further on down in the paragraph that starts with illusions, then while the form of them may seem to be many, are really one. Healing occurs when, in the depths of the mind, the decision is made to surrender and to give up the insane idea that one's self could possibly exist apart from the mind of God. Surrender means to settle into the position of the servant, the conduit through which the mind of God, the love of God, can be expressed. This is my feeling. This is my expression as I try to process this material, is this idea that, like, look, I'm just showing up and letting the love of God flow through me. That's my job, is just to surrender to what Spirit wants me to do today in terms of letting the love of God flow through me. In the next paragraph, it says that surrender means to settle in the position of the servant, the conduit. I already said that. Excuse me. Later down in the paragraph, it says that is why all events are neutral, and the mind that interprets an event draws a conclusion and then bases behavior upon it, right? So in other words, we perceive it through our own perceptions, not through God's perceptions, but through our own perceptions. And we start to put all kinds of labels on these experiences. And it starts to go deeper into that thought. The mind that is healed and rests in surrender looks out upon an innocent world that has been touched by its blessings of forgiveness. So in other words, it can look upon anything and there's no judgment, right? And it realizes further on down that there was nothing more than its own mental creation, and smiles and laughs and sees the world has held no power. In all the events that have arisen, all interpretations of events have been generated from within the kingdom of the mind. So in other words, we're interpreting everything that's happening right, wrong, good, bad, and everything in between. And that's what we're doing. And then I love it in the following paragraph that starts off, the mind that has been healed of illusion has been healed of all illusion. Further on down in the paragraph, it says, no longer communicates separation and judgment, but rather functions in forgiveness and innocence, right? So we stay neutral. We are able to stay neutral. We forgive and believe that everything is innocent, and we start processing the information that's coming in without any judgment, letting go of it. Everything is neutral. And then further on down in the paragraph, this sentence that says, that is, you're still attempting to perceive yourself as having accomplished the impossible, to have separated yourself from the mind of God, right? And then I love the paragraph that says, when the mind is surrendered, you could say that the body walks as an empty shell and is merely waiting to be informed by the love of God. It's kind of like you're waiting for command from up above. When the love of God does not inform you or ask you to move and take action, then simply rest and do nothing, right? Beautiful. So the next section is called The World is Innocent, and I love this section because it talks a lot about lack. In the paragraph that starts off, you remain perfectly free to choose to perceive differently. You are never the victim of anything, since nothing within an illusion holds the power to truly have any effect on you. So again, it's this idea of you're not a victim, but then it really starts to talk in the paragraph that starts, and what does the Father have? And it starts to go on and says, what could your Father will for you, but that you awaken from the dream that there is something in the world that can add value to you. In other words, we already have it all. There's nothing we can do to add value, right? Further on down, it says, and better than this, to become freed of the perception that the lack of someone, something, some career, some location, some form of any kind could detract from your being, from your perfect power of the union of God. That's a really powerful concept. This idea of that you lack something, just that in of itself could take days to contemplate where in your life you feel like you're lacking something. At least it was for me, and still is at times. I feel that way. The next paragraph, peace then comes from a decision that you put into practice over time, in which the world is released from your belief that it should somehow be for you the conduit whereby you gain good feelings, love, peace, wisdom, ideas, comradeship, and even brotherhood or sisterhood, when in truth, again, we have it all. In the next paragraph, it even goes on further in this concept of lack and says, the belief that loss is possible and also that gain is possible is just simply an illusion. There can only be recognition of what is true through the practice of extending the good, the holy, and the beautiful. And the next paragraph is really powerful. The end of illusion is very near when the mind reaches the following point. When any mind looks upon its creations and it has attempted to make itself and finds all of it lacking, then something is missing. How many times has that happened where you've accomplished a goal that you were looking to have, only to feel empty when that's done? And that's because you're not lacking anything, right? And when the mind simply decides to withdraw the value it has placed on the world and rests in the simple desire to be with God. I love that. Just a simple desire. I just want to be with God. I just want to hang out with God today. Then heaven is but a step away. And that final step is taken by your creator for you. In other words, we don't do it. Which the ego just freaks out when it hears, wait a minute, I don't do that? No, you don't. The creator does it. The creator does it for you. And so it gives an exercise where it says, Father, Mother God, how would you have me be present this day? Beautiful question. And then at the final paragraph in that section says, this requires the learning to how to use consciousness differently, but is all predicated on a return to peace. That is why, above all things, your responsibility is to enter into surrender. And it's really an interesting concept to surrender, because for the ego, that is death. And that's why you can struggle with it. I've struggled with it. I think a lot of us struggle with this idea, because the ego believes that its job is to basically run the show. And now what we're saying is, No, I don't need to run the show. I'm going to let spirit run the show. And to the ego, that is absolute death. And that's why it can be so difficult to surrender, because again, the ego thinks that it's going to die if you do that, right? In the next section called Questions to Ponder, it's a really simple question, and that's basically what would happen if everything was taken away from me. And I think it's interesting because and then he goes on further to go on and say, well, what would happen if I went and lived in a cave, right? And shut out the world? Then I could know God. And then the comment is that approach never works. Right. And then I think it's interesting, he just makes the comment that it's not necessary to spend endless hours in meditation seeking to quiet the mind. It's only necessary to withdraw value from what arises in the field of the lower mind, so that what arises, what is recognized, is the perfect value that is held in your prior union with God. Love that. And then the following chapter, the section of the book is You Are Free to Choose Anew. And then it says, now in this very moment of eternity, you can choose to recognize that you are already perfectly awake. So that's a huge statement right there. I think the brakes need to be tapped a little bit just to contemplate that for a minute. You are already perfectly awake. Imagine if you walked around all day telling yourself that you were perfectly awake all day, instead of, I got work to do, I got to focus on this, I need to do this, I need to meditate more, I need to do this, right? And it's all this stuff, right, that we think that we need to do, where we could just make a decision to say that we're already perfectly awake. Freely choosing what out pictures you will pour forth from the mind, freely choosing that whatever you think, whatever to think for yourself or to think with God. And then I love the affirmation, I can choose peace instead of this. I am surrendered to nothing. I'm surrendered and nothing matters save the extension of good, the holy, the beautiful. Therefore, Father, in this moment, what is your will for me? Mother, Father, God, what is your will for me? I love this, just the statement. You are free to see, and please listen carefully, right where you are, that the separation never occurred. There's never been a separation. Even just sit with that. Like, I've never been separate from God. I've never been separate from God. I've never been separate from God. I'm one with God. I'm one with God. I'm one with God, right? And then I love the statement, I am awake now. My dream has not occurred. No separation has occurred. No distance has been traveled. Grace has already restored me, and I am free to perceive the new world. Wow. Then it goes on just to give you a little bit of an exercise. It says, what we do is ask you to spend some time doing what we suggested, to sit quietly and ask the questions that you were asked to 2 pages ago, which is, again, determining, what you think adds value to you, and if it was taken away, what that would mean to you. And just understanding that there's nothing that can be added, there's nothing that can be taken away in terms of your value. Yeah, and I think that's it for this chapter. Powerful one, short one, beautiful one. So I hope you enjoy. Our next lesson, 20, is Vigilance for the Kingdom. I'm looking forward to seeing you then. Take care, and God bless.